So I'm back at Dancing Rabbit Ecovillage now, and I was in Ohio for about a month before coming back here, and most of this video was actually shot in the Ohio suburbs. So it would have been nice to be shooting this video about 13 years living in an eco-village from an actual eco-village, but you can never know what life is gonna throw at you, especially during a pandemic. So what's it been like to live in an eco-village for 13 years? That's what I'm going to be talking about today. So before I moved to Dancing Rabbit, I was living in Madison, Wisconsin, and I had always imagined living in the country. I wanted to have access to land, I wanted to do gardening and farming, and I wanted to live a more sustainable lifestyle. I also had visions of starting a vineyard and having a winery in the country, and so access to land was pretty key for that. So those were all the things that I was thinking about before I moved to Dancing Rabbit. Then I eventually made it to Dancing Rabbit, and I moved there and started setting up my life the way I wanted it to be, the way I'd envisioned it. Living sustainably, started building a house, and I wanted to build a house out of natural materials, make a straw bale house. I wanted to have solar power. I wanted to have a big garden. I wanted to be raising my food organically, growing my own food. I wanted to have more access to natural areas, just be closer to nature and see the stars, hear the sounds of wildlife. So this is what I occupied myself with the first few years that I was at Dancing Rabbit. I was building a house. I was establishing a life for myself. I was setting up all these systems. I was improving the soil and planting a garden and growing my own food. So finally I had all of this set up after a few years and was living the life that I wanted to. It's kind of interesting how you look forward to something for so long and then you finally get it and you have it integrated into your life, and I'm living totally sustainably now. But then it kind of becomes old hat and you just kind of take it for granted. It's harder to realize that you're actually living in a radical way. And so I think that's sort of what happened after my first few years at Dancing Rabbit. And one way I've dealt with that is by showing other people the way I'm living. Especially with this YouTube channel, it's been a great way of connecting with people, and I love seeing the comments from you all and responding to them, and it really makes me feel like I'm showing people the way that I'm living, I'm teaching them something, and I'm reminding myself of the way that I'm living and that I'm doing something significant. I've probably reduced my impact on the planet by about 90% compared to the average American. And then also some of the other things that I had wanted to do, like the vineyard and winery, I found out that they were going to either take a lot longer than expected, or I just sort of ran into a lot of obstacles. The climate was difficult, the soil was really bad, and I hadn't realized that before I moved to Dancing Rabbit. And so I just ran into difficulties and things that made me realize that maybe it wasn't going to be possible to do those things, to have a vineyard and winery. And so I struggled for a few years. And things have gotten a little bit better as the vineyard has gotten established, but I haven't gotten any kind of certainty as to whether that will be a viable business. And I'm kind of working on that now. I'm working on other plans to do a feasibility study and see if I can determine if it's ever going to be possible to do that kind of thing at Dancing Rabbit. So I guess I'm going to kind of like just bring up some questions, and then I'm going to answer those questions. Different facets and aspects of living sustainably in an eco-village. And the first one is, what ways is my life much better for living at Dancing Rabbit? I live a cleaner life there. I've got fresh vegetables that I grow myself. I've got cleaner air, I've got sunshine, I've got closeness to nature, hearing frogs, hearing birds. There's just a lot of amazing sounds of nature, the coyotes in the distance every night, the owls hooting in the evening. Being able to see all the stars in the sky is something incredible. When there's a clear night, you go outside, there's no light pollution, and you can see millions, literally millions, maybe even billions of stars. That's incredible. I've got a community of like-minded people at Dancing Rabbit, most of whom want to live a more sustainable lifestyle and who I share values with. There's a lot of creative, kind, and giving people at Dancing Rabbit with a really positive outlook on the future, and they're dedicated to doing what they need to do to ensure that the future is better. And that is inspiring to me. It's inspiring to be living in a place where I'm working with people like that. I've got a great grocery store that sells organic food in bulk, any kind of dry goods like sweeteners, oils. It's a short walk from my house and I can get all of that stuff in bulk. It's pretty great. I've got a car co-op I'm a part of, and I have access to 3 different cars and 1 truck, and that means I don't have to own my own car. So we've got all these shared resources at Dancing Rabbit. In addition to the car co-op, we've got our own microgrid that produces its own solar and wind power. We've got a common house that's like just a community space for people to hang out in. There's showers in there, there's a kitchen, there's humanure stalls, there's a library, a computer lab. So all these things I have access to and I can share with other people at a pretty low cost. And at Dancing Rabbit, there's enough people around that there's somebody always organizing some kind of a social event. And although I've kind of like shied away from social events in more recent years, I like the fact that I can participate in those things if I want to, or I can just hang out in my house, or I can meet with individual friends and not have to be surrounded by a big group of people. The easy access to the land, albeit land that needs a lot of work. So that's definitely something that's been better for me. I've been able to do gardening. I've planted huge like fruit plantings and permaculture plantings, and I've got my warren around my house, which is my lot of land, is producing lots of food every year. So investments of mine that have come to fruition at Dancing Rabbit in the last 13 years, I've built 2 houses, Wisteria Lodge and the Flouch. The Flouch is the one that I live in now, straw bale house. I've got gardens that I've built, and I've built the soil over years, and the vineyard as well. The vineyard started out as just like a crappy, degraded, conventionally farmed field, and very little topsoil, and I feel like I've built that up into very productive land. I've put in a hoop house with irrigation, and I brought the irrigation into my vineyard as well. And then, of course, like planting fruit trees everywhere in addition to the vineyard. I've got tons of fruit trees in my yard. I've got perennial plants and they're producing. I've got bushes. So all that stuff, because I've had so much time at Dancing Rabbit, I've had enough time to get those things established. The espaliered pear that's on my garden shed, that thing took years to get trained up against my garden shed, and it produces fruit every year. All of those things came to fruition and they're working really well. What are some of the things that have changed at Dancing Rabbit since I moved there? Well, the population has changed quite a bit. When I went there, I think there were about 23 people or so living there, and the population increased shortly after that, and it went up and then it went back down a little bit. So the population has changed, but also since then, many more buildings have been built. I've built 2 buildings myself, and about 35 other buildings have been added to the village in the last 13 years. All the trees are so much bigger than when I moved there, and some of them are gone. It used to feel more like an open field, like a farm field that had maybe a few small trees in it, and now the trees have grown up and they're providing shade, and it looks so much more like more of a canopy over everything. I can't talk about Dancing Rabbit and living there for 13 years without talking about some of the negative aspects of living there. And probably some of you are curious about what the negatives are. Making money. is always a challenge for everybody who lives there, and definitely has been for me. You know, you're doing all different kinds of things, and I have many different revenue sources. I'm not making a lot of money, but I scrape by, and I would like to be making more, and that's something that I'm always working on. I have ideas for projects, and working on those now. And then another aspect of living at Dancing Rabbit that I don't like is the stress of meetings and community process, which everyone tends to have a problem with this. There are times that I'm really proud of our process, and I'm proud of the decisions we've made and the policies that we've made, but it's also been so often a huge struggle, especially when I'm in conflict with people about some particular topic. And that's just been difficult. There's also times that I've felt browbeaten by other people into submission, instead of just being able to have my opinion about the way things should be. And also, you know, after several years of living at Dancing Rabbit and staying over in the village for the winter time, with the long winters, the darkness, the cold, it just was so isolating. And I'm not the kind of person that likes to just sit inside in front of a wood stove all winter long. I can't deal with that. I need to be in green. And so that's why I addressed this issue by setting it up so that I could go to Florida during the winter time. And now, instead of, you know, the fall rolling around and I'm dreading the winter and having to wait for 6 months or whatever, 5 or 6 months for it to be over until I can get my hands in the dirt again, I can go to Florida, and I actually look forward to going there because I'm excited about going there in the fall. I can get my access to green and fresh fruit, and love going fishing and kayaking when I'm there. So it's completely revolutionized my life at Dancing Rabbit, and has definitely kept me there much longer than I would have stayed, because I think that would have been a factor that made me want to leave. Investments that haven't come to fruition. I guess winemaking actually making me money is something that hasn't come to fruition, because I'm making wine, but I'm not making enough of it, and I don't have a winery established. So that's something that I wanted to happen, and yeah, that's my vineyard as a business. And then also growing food on a larger scale, like growing staple foods, is something that I've always wanted to do at Dancing Rabbit. And I tried it a few years ago, and I'm just not confident that there are people there that are dedicated enough to make that happen. Yeah, so 13 years living in an eco-village. It's been a long time, and I feel like the first 4 years went really slowly, and then the rest of the time has gone super fast. So what does the future hold for me at Dancing Rabbit? Well, you know, doing this YouTube channel and making connections with people and feeling like I'm educating people, I'm really re-inspired about my life at Dancing Rabbit. And I see a lot of potential for our community. You know, I can still imagine a thriving village with a few hundred people and a thriving economy. I'm not looking for us to make a lot of money, but just a sense that there's businesses that are producing things for the village, for people in the village, and we're bringing money in from outside the village, and we're just thriving economically, that we're meeting our goals and we're reaching people, we're really inspiring them, and they come to Dancing Rabbit and they're like, this is an amazing thing that you're doing here. And it just takes dedication, it takes inspiration, and it takes a sense of abundance. And sometimes I feel like we have a sense of scarcity at Dancing Rabbit more than anything else. And overall, I would say that living in an eco-village has been really fulfilling in most ways. I think there are a lot of people out there who are not happy with their lives. They're working a 9-to-5 job. They live in a city. They're surrounded by concrete and consumerism, and they're just not happy with that. And they've got their head in a device all the time. That is just kind of soul-crushing. Living sustainably, to me, it's not just an alternative to that. It's not just like a way of reducing your carbon footprint or your impact on the planet. It's something way more. It's like a holistic way of living. It involves living more simply. You're not sacrificing things by living more sustainably. You're actually living a richer lifestyle. You're just living simpler, and you're focusing on the things that are important in life. The complicated world of like technology and consumerism is just, it can be overwhelming, and a lot of people are overwhelmed by it, and they don't have enough space in their lives to like slow down and contemplate things that are important in their life. So they just blow through their life until they get to retirement age, at which time, if they make it, if they live that long, then they can enjoy life. There's no egg, of course. Well, unfortunately, my effort to get some local eggs failed due to an unfortunate case of gravity. I'm guessing somebody dropped a bunch of eggs. I don't have any for sale today, which is too bad. Usually it's pretty reliable. They ended up having a dozen eggs, fortunately. I guess somebody was collecting the eggs and they had them in a basket, and then the chickens knocked the whole basket over. So that's why there weren't any, but I was able to get some. Living sustainably, I feel like you bring everything down to a level of simplicity where it's like these shows about Japanese technology and like Japanese crafts that I watch. Very simple ways of living that have been around for thousands of years, and they take a lot of time, but there's so much skill involved. It's just a different way of living, of putting the time and effort into making things that are quality. It adds meaning to your life in a way, in a whole new dimension. Because I feel like in our culture, everything's got to be fast, it's got to be like convenient and quick, and there's no skill involved in anything anymore. It's like everything is made for the dumbest, lowest common denominator person, so that everything can be done quickly and without any skill. A sustainable lifestyle involves learning so many skills. Like, I think about something like as simple as scything. Instead of using a noisy fossil fuel guzzling motorized lawnmower, you use a scythe that's a simple blade on a stick. And it takes skill to learn how to use it and to take care of it. And it's hard work, but it's also a much more like mentally soothing way of cutting grass. And if you can get into it, and it's sort of like a Zen thing, if you can get into it and not feel like it's drudgery, like it's like this whole new level of meaning to your life. And I think there's a lot of things like that in sustainable living, where you have to learn a skill, you have to learn a more complicated way of going about your life, but it opens up these new doors and opens up your life to a lot more meaning and purpose. The next video that I'm going to do is answering some questions that viewers asked. I put out a little message on my channel last year sometime, and I got a bunch of questions from people, so I'm just going to go through those one by one and answer your questions. I didn't feel like there was enough time in this video to answer those questions. I just thought it would go on for a long time, and it would be, some of them were kind of off the topic of what I wanted to talk about as far as 13 years living in an eco-village. Alright, well, keep watching. We'll see you next time on Hardcore Sustainable. Don't forget to check out the Instagram page and Facebook. Follow Facebook, Instagram, all those things. And, yep. Take care.